Hello and welcome to Lockdown Beers and Rugby Chat here on New Zealand Sports Radio. Hi, I'm Paul. I'll be your host. So here we are helping you get through lockdown. I know it's not a work day, it's a Sunday, but even so, look, it's nearly 5 o'clock, which means time to start winding down at the end of the day. And a dry hopped Pilsner Moa Brewing is what I've got there for me to crack open. Look, during the week, as I say, it's not a good idea to necessarily crack open the beers too early, so hence that's why I wait till 5 o'clock. I've got 1 minute and 10 seconds till I can crack mine open. Let's hope you've had a good weekend, are staying safe and have got vaccinated. What we'll be talking about, we'll have a quick look at the old international rugby. We've had a couple of games overnight as Scotland took on Tonga, and the All Blacks were hosted by Wales. And also we've had the Bunnings NPC action from the weekend as well. And as Friday was our last lockdown beers, we've got that all to catch up on. And joining me, I've got Boa. How are you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Sorry, just made it in time. As you can see, I've got a backyard size of Eden Park to mow, so that takes precedence. But hey, lovely to be here. And guess what? I've got a Spates Old Duck for a change today.
I do like a Spates Old Duck. You are a bit early there opening it, because we've got another 15 seconds until 5 o'clock. So yeah,
it's thirsty work, Paul. Trust me. Well, I must admit, I'll take that yellow card because it was better than the one we saw this morning, I have to say. Oh, God.
There we go, 5 o'clock, and you can hear that because I just cracked open my beer, and I'm now pouring it into the old glass. I'm just trying to suddenly, you've gone and caught me on the hop now as to which yellow card that was. So, I
think the person who should be yellow carded in year 2021 at test level, if anyone is going to go head first into contact like a bull was going to do at a matador, I think the bull needs to be yellow carded. That was downright dangerous. And given that, there's so much emphasis on World Rugby in and around tackle technique, and one of the key aspects, and if any of the younger viewers, any of your coaches watching there, one of the most important things when a ball carrier goes into contact into a tackle is to look square. Keep your eyes square on the tackler. Do not take your eyes away and look down, because it's going to be absolute disaster. And I have to say, I'm very, very, very happy that there was no serious injury on Moriarty, because, by word, that was some significant contact on Nepolaula's shoulder, the back of Moriarty's head and neck area. So in that sense, I'm happy, but it was a ridiculous yellow card. So yeah, don't get me started on that.
I'll disagree with you a bit there. Now, I agree with you purely on the head contact side of things. Absolutely, that was entirely if you're going to go in there with your head basically lower than your shoulders, you are running that risk. And yes, he needs to keep his eyes up so he can, as you say, on that sort of things. However, Lualala made no attempt to wrap, and so I think from a shoulder barge point of view, yellow card was absolutely fine. But because of the lack of the wrap, now the problem there is then that we see several of those other ones of those during the game that aren't penalised, and it's a consistency issue. But as I say, not. I don't agree with the yellow card for the height of the tackle, for the head contacts, and they said that was mitigated, and that it was for the no arms, which I fully understand. So for me, I think it was fair enough, but I do also think there are probably about 10 others that could or should have been given during the game, and through most games of rugby, that is, because of the lack of arms being used by players.
Well, what I have to say in defense of Laulala and most international teams practices, particularly the All Blacks, in a two-man tackle, you saw Blackadder, he got nice and low, he bent at his knees and went square and struck Moriarty round about the waist, just above, around the rib cage. And if you see where Laulala was...
He also hit Moriarty around the shoulders as well. I mean, this idea that I don't think he got hit at the ribs at all. I mean, Moriarty was so far down, it was pretty much impossible to hit his ribs unless you're tackling.
Well, I had about 16 views of the 16 different replays on this particular tackle, and I have to say, it was secondary contact. The shoulder clearly made contact underneath his ribcage. And of course, the second man tackle, where Nepo was coming in, that was a very passive tackle. It's what we call an airbag tackle. So whilst there is no clear attempt of wrapping the arm, it's actually a very passive tackle. And God forbid, had Nepo actually driven hard in, it would have snapped Moriarty's neck in half, because that to me was just pure stupidity. You do not enter into contact looking down with your head down. It is simply very, very poor technique. And this is the sort of thing I've been arguing this for a good part of 2.5 years, where we actually need a orange card, where it's a on report incident. If there's a further case to answer, you go through a judicial procedure for inside 48 hours, and it's up to the referee's discretion whether it becomes a bin or a penalty. So in my view, that should probably arguably be a penalty, but you could have penalized the ball carrier for putting himself in an absolutely dangerous situation.
Right then, unfortunately, I'm going to get double teamed now, because I know Stephen Harris also believes with you around this on reports thing, whereas I don't think we need on report. I think we've already got citing commissioners there to deal with all of that, and that the citing commission just needs to be more active. But that's a
Steve, I'll let you have a crack at ball.
Yeah, how many times do you reckon we've actually spoken about this?
Well, that's why I want to try and keep it as little as possible.
I've
probably 200 times.
Yeah, 200 times. I've lost count. 5 years' time, 10 years' time, we'll be talking about the same thing, when there just could have been an easy fix by putting it on report. It's so subjective at the moment. Man, if you look across the social network, everybody's got a different opinion. There's something seriously wrong with your game when you've got that sort of comment going on, because we all know rugby's a very subjective game. Everybody looks at different. If you wanted to find every infraction in rugby, the game would be stop-start. It'd probably take as long as gridiron would actually take. Some things are designed to speed the game up, but we are totally getting this wrong at the moment. You put something on report, you don't compromise the game or time more than anything else. But the stoppages that we're seeing at the minute are totally unacceptable. And, we've even got to the stage where, we're seeing the theatrics as well. Some players will get up straight away. Some players legitimately hurt. The game has got a problem. If we're still talking about this in 5 years' time, it's got a problem. If it's 10 years' time we're talking about it, we're probably the only guys watching the game.
Look, clearly the game has got a problem. And as Simon says, our ancestors will be talking about this one in the future. Absolutely. And therefore, we won't continue to talk about it tonight, because otherwise, we'll be here all night. So moving on then, and let's talk about some good things about the game then. Congratulations, Bowden Barrett, on 100 caps, and also picking up 2 tries in this one. To me, I think probably one of the not the turning points, one of the key points in this game was when Alwyn Jones went off with injury with his shoulder, because after that, it seemed that the All Blacks kind of got on top, but they weren't getting points initially. Clearly, those points started to flow after that one, but they really needed his leadership out there, didn't they, Bob?
Absolutely. Look, he's an absolute colossus in the game. I mean, world record holder for most number of test caps. I mean, most of us mere mortals struggle to play 150 games of any kind, be it social rugby or prezzies or community games. So to play 150 test games, that is incredible. And I don't say that lightly. Yeah, as soon as Alwyn Jones went off injured, there was a real lack of leadership. It looked like Wales were kind of drifting from play to play. They were very, very predictable. And of course, their defensive effort really kind of fell off, because all I saw was pretty much what I call chest or shoulder surfing, where players were sort of getting up and just trying to graze onto some of the black jerseys, and it just all fell apart. And it's very, very difficult to replace that sort of experience. So hopefully he does recover. It was, it felt a very sad sight seeing some of those photos, him and video footage, him walking back into the sheds, with his head down, quite dejected. And of course, father age is catching up with Alwyn Jones. So hopefully he gets to crack his 150th, the champagne performance. And I have to say, even a man with his experience, boy, it would have felt an absolute pummeling to get overrun and be hit by a real form horse like the All Blacks in his 149th game.
Yeah, real shame. And Stephen, you can keep going to the next Rugby World Cup because that's what he seems to be trying to do.
Oh wow, yeah! What an absolute trooper. He's just my respect for him has gone up in my estimation, especially fronting up against the Springboks after pretty much being written out of that tour. And you just don't want to write this guy off. He's a class footballer, and you're right about that leadership. And you saw the difference on the other side of it with somebody like Sam Whitelock, who I reckon was just born for Test rugby, and more importantly, he was born to captain an international rugby side, because what we saw this morning is what we probably didn't have in those last two tests against the Springboks.
But did have a fantastic game as well this morning. So look, it's and he has got a lot. He's also got a lot less experience than Sam Whitelock has at captaincy. So that's not, that's on that side of things as well. I mean, Sam Whitelock has been captain for the Crusaders, hasn't he, for a long time as well. So, interesting one. Sorry, go on, Mo.
No, what I was saying was just building on what Stephen was saying. I think three key players for me: Samuel Whitelock, Adi Savea, and also Ethan Blackadder. We've actually learned a lot from that loss to the Boks, because if you looked at how they carried, it was just head down, ice nice and straight and forward, and just absolutely smashing through and getting those easy positive meters. And that's what was missing. And once that physicality got injected in, and soon as we got quick recycle ball, and I have to say with guys like TJ Perinara, they've learned their lessons, and they looked at clearing the ruck lightning quick. And soon as the ball got into Bowden Barrett's hands, the gap started opening up, particularly that last try. Beg your pardon, the penultimate try, where we went pretty much edge to edge. It was just basic catch and pass, but because the physicality and the clearing of the ruck was done at lightning quick pace and was so brutal and physical, the ball was just so well presented. It sort of turned into a training run, and to be able to do that against a side who are the reigning Six Nations champions, it tells you a lot about the quality and the focus of these All Blacks.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Wales were missing a bunch of players through injury and also unavailability. But look, as you say, they are the Six Nations champions, and you have to deal with injury, and that was their main issue for them. You can see that the All Blacks, particularly early on, were very wary about the back three or the wide players of Wales. Josh Adams is a try-scoring machine, but they were very serious about blitzing and sending someone flying up to make sure the ball did not get wide, and try and keep the Welsh playing narrow, because they saw that danger, they knew that danger, and they'd done their homework, and they cut it off. So, look, this wasn't a game just built on attack, even though a lot of people will concentrate on the number of tries we've scored, and particularly tries like Will Jordan, which was cracking one, and also Sever Reese's one with that basketball style play down the 5 meter line. Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some of the highlight reel there that we'll see on Twitter and Facebook for a while to come, I think.
Yep.
The interesting point about Blackadder, because I think a lot of us were a bit surprised to see his selection. I thought Akira Iwani would come back in for that sixth role, so well done to him in that role. And also the fact that we took off Papali'i, replaced with Akira Iwani, and didn't lose anything, which showed you that Blackadder can make up that sort of things as well, Stephen.
Yeah. Listen, Blackadder, apart from slipping off a tackle, the physicality that he brings, he's just got himself. He involves himself in the game all the time, and he's a smart footballer as well. He don't give away a lot of penalties, and that's what I quite like about him. But it just seems that trio look like they're just starting to understand each other's game a little bit better. Akira, you'd always have him off a bench. Where this leaves Sam Cane, I'm not 100% sure at this stage. But boy, what a handy acquisition, or somebody to have parked in the garage, should I say?
Yeah, look, Blackadder is born to play Test footy. He's an old school rugby player. I mean, for me, his form line suggests that he starts every single time going forward, and he's an 80 minutes player. So, this is what was missing, particularly against that loss against the Boks, where we were a bit thin at ruck time. So with guys like Blackadder, because he has that ability to go that extra meter at will and place the ball nice and easy, he's going to give you front football. So I think for me, he's a very easy top pick where he starts at number 6 and Akira to obviously come off the bench. And rightly pointed out by Mr. Harris, question mark over Sam Kane.
Oh, I think he comes in for Papali'i. That's my. But I still think he needs to get himself up to speed first before that happens. The big question, though, I think that comes from this game is going to be that number 12 jersey. Craig Crabstyle in the live chat says, was I wrong about David Havili, as is he the answer in midfield? And I think that question is definitely still open as to whether he is or isn't the answer in there. And I think that the entire back line actually, well, I think we know who our 9 is, but he's not on tour. We don't know who our backup 9 is yet. We don't really know who our 10 is. We know who our 15 is, but the rest of that back line is a bit up in the air as to who goes where at the moment. And I think this is probably Ian Foster's biggest piece now, is showing us that he knows who his starting best back line is, because I don't think he knows at the moment. Do you guys?
I think listen, I'm going to cut him a bit of slack, because I think he was a case of almost last man standing when he got that position at second 5. You know, Quinta Paya and a couple of others we weren't quite sure. Braden Eno was injured, and I think he's gone in and done an adequate job. So I think he deserves that respect from these selectors at this present time. What I do like about his game, he's got a very, very good kicking game, and yeah, he's been a little bit off. Whether, you know, Quinta Paya would have to do something absolutely amazing for me to be better than Havili at the moment. Of course, we shouldn't forget we've got Jack Goodhue, who will be coming back from injury next year. I think we persist with Havili.
No question. I think I think it's a bit unfair, because if you look at the stats and the work he's done, there's no question, there's no argument that Havili should be starting, second 5. And of course, as you rightly pointed out, Steve, his kicking game is very, very good. And again, we need to give these guys a bit of time so that they can adjust and play instinctive footy with these combinations, particularly if you're going to try Borden Barrett more and more at 10. And I think today we saw glimpses of some, absolute real genius, particularly in defense. How Borden was actually attacking the ball as opposed to the man, and that read that first intercept. So, I think Havili outside Barrett for the moment, and of course Jack Goodhue coming back in. So it'll be interesting to see. But again, it's a good problem to have. And another thing I have to say is with Ian Foster and his coaching team, these guys, they like to chop and change. They move players around. So we're starting to see footballers who are starting to acquire multiple skills, who are, at any given time can play multiple positions, which is not your customary line of, rugby union thinking here in New Zealand. But I guess that's something we're going to have to find out maybe right till the end of this tour.
So Good for the Game says, is it really necessary to know your best backline, who your best backline is when the players who come in are so good? To my mind, yes. When it comes to the Rugby World Cup final, you want to know who the best side is, and and you're going to want to have those players have played with each other several times going into that game, so they're ready. They know what it's like. So yes, you do have to know it. You don't necessarily have to know it for this tour, but you do have to know it ahead of the Rugby World Cup, and you do have to have run it out several times before the Rugby World Cup as well, in my opinion. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to the rest of the rugby this weekend? Well,
one thing I have to say is, look, I'm actually going to give the referee a bit of credit. He did miss a lot of things. I mean, a lot of stuff. But the upshot to it all was it allowed the game to kind of flow, because, I could count maybe a dozen rucks where all I saw was red shirts all over the floor, just infringing left, right, and center. But to the referee's credit, the Frenchman, he didn't actually keep blowing his whistle. He just kind of let it roll, and that kind of helped the All Blacks. And to be fair, the All Blacks had their fair share of infringing as well. So, weird sort of way, by actually not trying to be a traffic policeman from the 1960s, trying to overdo your whistle job, he actually allowed the game to kind of become more spectator friendly. So from that aspect, albeit a little bit weird, a bit of a positive, and hopefully some of these referees watching would have taken notes.
Paul, just one quick thing for me. Got to give credit to the young open side flanker for Wales. I thought he was just name just escapes me at the moment. I know Wainwright that was the number 8, but the number 7 making his debut, I thought was very, very good. He just if you think about that first try that Bowden Barrett picked off, you looked around and he was one of the chasers right there, and it was a constant menace at the breakdown. So good debut for the young man.
Yeah, so Basham is the name you're talking about there. So yes, good. Good debut for him. Well, just take just answer one question from the live chat. Nocturnal Right says, can someone explain the penalty against Josh Adams leaping in the air? Right. So the penalty was called against Josh Adams because he jumped beyond where the ball was, rather than for the ball itself. And therefore, even though Geordie Barrett didn't get as high and wasn't in a position to compete for the ball, they were arguing the reason he couldn't compete for the ball was because he jumped beyond the ball. Do we see that called that way very often? No, put bluntly. And I must admit, I thought it was a penalty in the other direction because Geordie hadn't got up high enough to compete for the ball. But that's why it was called that way. Whether I agree with it or not is a different matter, to be honest. But that's why it was called that way. Is he wasn't really. They said he wasn't jumping for the ball. Good for the game says, South Africa never even know who our best coach was 2 years before the World Cup. It's now about building depth. Yes, true. There is an element of that on that one. And Craig says, his favourite European ref. Moving on then to the rest of the rugby. First up, we've got Italy next up for the All Blacks. I expect, again, 17 to 20 changes for that game. So, look, folks, we'll talk more about that on Tuesday evening on the Driving More show, so do join us for that. The other international game this overnight was Scotland beating Tonga 60-14. Congratulations, Scotland. I'll be honest, I've not seen the game or seen anything of this, but I don't know if you guys have.
I did catch the highlights, and look, it was one-way traffic. But to Tonga's credit, they did try, but these sort of mismatches. It's not doing Pacific Islands rugby any good. And I really don't want to get into it because Tonga seem to be the punching bag for most of these tier 1 nations. And it has to stop in some form or shape, unless, of course, we give these Pacific Island nations better preparation time so that they can stay together for longer. But it's pretty one-way traffic. And 10 tries. They copped another 10 tries.
Yeah, something a little bit unusual as well. It's not often you see a Tui Pelotu playing for Scotland as well. I never thought I'd actually see the day, but it obviously does happen. I kind of looked through their squad, and once again, a very watered down squad. I saw Whanau Funaki, who basically is pretty much a squad member of the Northland side. So it just gives you an idea maybe of the quality of players that they actually had there. So, I agree with, and all in all, though, I agree with Boa. I'm sick of them being the punching bags for tier 1 teams.
And look, cap off to them. They always turn up, right? Samoa said they wouldn't play the All Blacks during the mid-year window because they knew what was going to happen. Samoa and Fiji, or Samoa's not touring Europe, understandably. Don't get me wrong, but Fiji again are only picking European-based players. But Tonga, look, they always turn up, a bit like Argentina. We need to keep giving them the games and keep supporting them as much as possible. This has been an out-of-window game for them. So, players won't be available, just like they weren't for Scotland and for Wales. Hat tip to Tonga, they are turning up and playing. Moving on then to the NPC, we start on Friday night with, I'll be honest, an upset for me was with Canterbury beating Tasman on Friday in a close one. That one was 24-20. Any points from the game you guys want to talk about?
For me, big performance from Luke Romano. I think he basically emphasised that he stood up. He was what that performance was all about. It was gritty. When they had the opportunity to nail the game, he was right in the thick of it. And whilst he's not wanted by the Crusaders, next year I believe they've picked the young Dom Gardner, who's a similar type of player, but only 20 years old, New Zealand under 20s. And the word doing the rounds, he's come to the Blues. May not be a bad sort of actual pickup with his experience. And to be brutally honest, in a season that hasn't been great for Canterbury, he's been outstanding.
Yep.
No question. I think Romano, I think he took responsibility as one of the elder statesmen in that side. And of course, on the low of averages, I mean, it was a 4-4 split now for Canterbury on the win-loss. I'm not overly surprised because the statistical pattern says that they are a side which, are due a win. But against Tasman, there's that element of upset. But again, close call. So well done to Canterbury. And I think the person who'd be most relieved is probably their coach, Ruben Thorne.
Yep, very true. Then on Saturday we had Southland beating Northland 37-33. This actually came down to two kicks that Marty Banks kicks all his kicks, whereas Dan Hawkins missed two of the conversions, and that was the difference between the two teams in the end. Now, look, scoreboard pressure doesn't mean that that's exactly the way it was, but look, it was four tries, 3 penalties each. The only difference was with those conversions. But look, Southland's line-out maul is a powerful weapon. That's what won the game basically, and you can't afford to give up penalties against Southland, can you, boys?
Yep, you did right there, Paul. And I thought Marty Banks was basically the leader of the orchestra. I think he was the conductor basically, and I think his kicking game was just pretty much spot on. He put a bit of pressure on, and of course, play of the game, that 50-20, which resulted in a try, which just took Southland out of reach. I think one of the real differences, I thought they also exploited Northland's staggered defence, not just on one occasion, but on at least 4 occasions. This is all right, very rushing from the kickoff, but you've got to have guys up in a line, and they were actually caught out on 4 occasions, and on 3 of those occasions it actually resulted in tries. When we've seen Marty Banks also this year basically run forward as though he's going to put a high up and under and decide to run. It's kind of reminded me of Artie Savia with the outrageous dummy that he's basically thrown on about 4 occasions this year, but I think it only got fell for once. Once you do it once, you never get away with it. Unfortunately, I don't think Northland were watching that video, and they'll probably look back at those little moments there because it was a game that they had to win. Unfortunately, even at 15-3 ahead at one stage, I still didn't have the confidence, and I'm sorry anybody who's tuning in from Taniwha region that they'd take the game. So I looked at the TAB odds and basically got across the line accordingly.
Yeah, look, very, very, very poor from Taniwha, I have to say. And you're on the money there, Mr. Harris. The defense was just disjointed. It's all great shooting up and blitzing the opponents, but if you don't go up in a line, you leave a little gap at first class level, you're just gonna get absolutely nailed. And the ultimate difference was, of course, kicking from the tee and kicking out of hand. And the 50-20 is starting to show its glove in NPC rugby, and I think this is something we're going to have to get used to. And most teams who have players of the caliber of Marty Banks will use it as a weapon.
And one more point as well, just on Tom Robinson. I was really surprised that he didn't enter the game until 10 minutes into the second half. You could see his leadership kick in the last 15 minutes, and that was the only time in the game where they actually started to get behind the advantage line and they started to bully the Stags a wee bit. I really thought he should have entered the game, even at the 30-minute mark just before halftime, just to bring some leadership. He's one heck of a player, and I think they missed his leadership in that first 50-odd minutes. But anyway, they got a big job in front of them. They've got to try and turn it around on Wednesday evening, I think it is. They play Bay of Plenty and Tauranga, who will be hurting as well, and I'm pretty sure we'll have a bit to say about that one as well. Paul, how's that for a good segue?
Well, absolutely, and I will be there on Wednesday for Bay of Plenty versus Northland in that game. So hopefully it's not raining. I can do some post-match interviews. Sorry, there were no post-match interviews in the Bay of Plenty versus Waikato because of the rain and my equipment getting all wet. Looking at Bay of Plenty versus Waikato, look, a very emotional game, obviously being the first game since Sean Wainui's passing. And great scenes by both teams with his brother being in the stands. Both teams walked out together side by side. Both sides did a haka as well. So, very moving scenes before the game. Moving on to the actual game itself, Waikato. Look, Waikato were top of the table, folks, in the Premiership. So I know a lot of people are saying that this was an upset, but they came out strongly, only for Bay of Plenty to come back until the yellow card, where Waikato again pulled out to a pretty good lead around half time. Look, in the end, the Bay of Plenty couldn't catch up, even with the Hamilton Burr Waikato yellow card there. They saw themselves home. I'm not quite sure what Nocturnal's point is there in the live chat about you staying in the car for the week, but never mind. I guess that's probably because Northland lost, but I'm in
the dog box.
The dog box, yes. Important win for Waikato. Bay of Plenty just will be very happy that there's no relegation this season.
Paul, I was going to say, just on that performance, a couple of little key things for me. I actually thought the Bay of Plenty scrum were getting on top, and I thought they'd finish over Waikato. So credit to Waikato that they hang around. But to me, once again, I think it's been the weekend of the locks, because I think the performance of James Tucker to pull that Waikato team together, I thought he just showed some really, really great leadership when it mattered. And I thought also a very good performance from their first five as well, D'Angelo Leulia. I thought he was absolutely fantastic for him defensively, and just basically kept Waikato in the right places. Bay of Plenty will look back at that game and think, gee, missed opportunity.
Yeah, probably an element there of, I think Waikato, maybe their players had to go, their first choice fly half, let's go back to Japan maybe, or something like that. But sorry if I said how wrong, but yes, the game on Wednesday is in Rotorua, and I'll be at that game. Sorry if I got the location wrong there, folks who are listening on the podcast. We then had Manawatu versus Hawke's Bay. Look, Manawatu were in this until half time, and then Hawke's Bay pulled it away in that second half to win that one 31-40. I think, Manawatu did well to stay in it for that long. And then finally, we had Otago versus Wellington in a game that was a non-points game or a non-competition game. Interestingly, it's a capped game, but it's not a competitive game. So it's all a bit confusing there. But anyway, congratulations to the couple of players who made its 50 caps in that game. Actually, also Will Tucker, I think, was also 50 caps as well for Waikato this weekend as well. But look, it might not have been a competitive game, but it was a fun game to watch. With Otago coming out on top 33-28. Now, look, a bunch of players, it was more of a fringe players thing, but that's good because they've all got something to play for. And I think the only disappointing thing from this game will be the number of injuries that unfortunately we saw.
I go along with you there, Paul. And the other thing, the great thing about that Otago Wellington game, great to see so many of the kids that we actually saw in the Super Rugby tournament, the under 20 tournament that played for the Highlanders, like Sean Withy, the number 7, although he got a red card there for a shoulder charge, rightly so. We also saw the very, very tall Fabian Holland, who I think might be the tallest player along with Dominic Bird in New Zealand, 2.08 meters, and he is definitely a long way up and only 19 years old. And we also saw the young first five.
Well, hang on, and we also saw he could shift as well, because he scored one from about 22 out.
Absolutely. And the young first five, boy, I don't know if there's a more relaxed goal kicker in this competition, only 19 years old. If you remember, if you think back to the game against the Crusaders at the under-20 tournament, kicked a wide-angle penalty from 50-odd metres to win the game after the Huta had gone, and just so relaxed as they come. So they've got some good young ones there. Just back to that Manawatu Hawke's Bay game last night, I thought the unloading of the bench in the second half was huge, and congratulations to Ollie Sapsford, not only playing his 50th game but picking up 3 meat pies. Doesn't seem fair.
Beers on him afterwards.
Yeah,
or he doesn't have to buy another beer in the there at all. So so folks, look, next weekend is the last round of games. I will hope to be at Waikato versus, I've gone blank, Waikato versus Otago on the Friday night. I'm assuming that will be at Rotorua due to lockdown issues in Hamilton, unless Waikato comes out of lockdown, which I can't see happening. But hey, that's health and politics and stuff I have no knowledge about. So we'll move on. And finally, folks, look, tomorrow morning, 3:30 a.m., there is a big game in the women's game. England take on the Black Ferns in the 100th Test match for the Black Ferns. Wow, when you think that there's 8 players have now played 100 times for the All Blacks, and the Black Ferns have only played 100 times, but good to reach a milestone, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be interesting because I think in between this time, I think England, the Black Ferns haven't played since 2019. So what's that? A couple of years? They're saying that the England women team have played, they reckon, about 24, 25 games during this time. So yeah, it's going to be a big ask for this Black Ferns team. I'm pretty sure the English girls will be motivated. They'll remember the last game that these two teams played. So it could be a tough night at the office for the Black Ferns.
Look, the Red Roses will have played in the Women's Six Nations, but not as many as 20. I can't imagine they've played as many as 24 games. But anyway, they will have played a lot more games. Now, don't forget the Black Ferns did play 2 games against the New Zealand Barbarians last year as well. So they have been together. They've just not played any international teams there for that one. It's held at Exeter. Have you ever been there, Paul? Yes, I went to university in Exeter, so I've been there once or twice. I've been there a bit, yes, but I've never been to the ground because it was I wasn't following rugby closely enough back then, and also the ground wasn't built.
Is that Sandy Park? Is it?
It's now Sandy Park. Yes, they would have been playing at the Greyhound racetrack before during my time. But as I say, I never made it to a game anyway.
Well, at least it hasn't. Well, at least it hasn't gone to the Dogs.
Oh, dearie me. And on that clanger, we'll say goodbye, folks. Hope you had a great weekend. Look, sorry, there will probably not be a Lockdown Beers tomorrow, as it's kind of a busy day for me with my other thing that I've got going on, which is called Kia Play NZ, which is making wooden children's toys. And we have our first ever item for sale. The auction finishes tomorrow. So I will be with my business partner, I guess he is, on that tomorrow, doing a whole bunch of stuff around that. So probably no Lockdown Beers tomorrow, unfortunately, folks. But do look out for Moana Pacifica signings. I wouldn't be surprised if they announce one at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And please, everyone, stay safe, get vaccinated, and let's get back to normal as soon as possible. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me. Thank you, Boa, who has run out of power, who was with us earlier. And catch you all next time, folks.